Some old Hollywood stars argued with directors, feuded with co-stars, and sometimes let their tempers destroy everything they worked for. Their fury wasn't just an act for the cameras, it was real, raw, and sometimes terrifying. Here are 16 Golden Age stars who had horrible tempers, the fiery legends who proved that even the brightest lights can burn out of control. Joan Crawford. Joan Crawford's steely on-screen persona was matched by a terrifying private temper. Nowhere was this more evident than in her role as mother. In 1978, Crawford's adopted daughter Christina released the memoir Mommy Dearest, detailing years of vicious abuse at Crawford's hand. Christina recounts one incident at age 13 when Joan, in a drunken rage, grabbed her by the throat, punched her face, and slammed her head into the floor. Such uncontrolled bouts of fury were not isolated. On another occasion, Joan dragged Christina out of bed in the middle of the night and beat her with a can of scouring powder simply for leaving soap streaks on the bathroom floor. The wider public never saw this violent side. To the world, Crawford was a glamorous, Oscar-winning star, but behind closed doors, her children endured unpredictable rages. Christina's memoir portrays Joan as a sadistic perfectionist and an alcoholic prone to unpredictable squalls of maternal fury. Some family members disputed the claims, but Christina's brother Christopher corroborated many details. Outside the home, Crawford's temper flared in Hollywood feuds. Bette Davis. Bette Davis, celebrated for her bold, uncompromising performances, also earned a reputation off-screen as a formidable and hot-tempered diva. Co-stars and directors quickly learned that Davis's determination could boil over into real fury. Nowhere was this more evident than in her notorious feud with Joan Crawford. During the filming of Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, in 1962 their animosity erupted physically. In one scene, Davis's character had to kick Crawford's character, and Bette did not hold back. She kicked Joan Crawford in the head for real, inflicting a wound that required stitches. Crawford retaliated by putting weights in her pockets so that in a later scene where Davis had to drag her, Bette strained her back. This shocking on-set battle became Hollywood lore and illustrated Davis's temper in action. Davis herself admitted to being difficult and often clashing with those she worked with. She would fire off scathing letters to directors if she felt disrespected, and even threatened to quit projects in anger. Co-stars noted that Bette could be explosively confrontational. She once ended an argument with a filmmaker by shouting, "Recast and pay me off. It will be cheaper in the long run," rather than compromise. At home, Davis also struggled with volatile relationships. Her daughter, Bette, later wrote that Bette was a heavy-drinking, emotionally manipulative mother, prone to dramatic tirades, though without the physical abuse seen in Crawford's case. Frank Sinatra. Friends and biographers alike have noted that Sinatra's emotional contradictions made him capable of great generosity and sudden rage. He even acknowledged his mercurial nature, joking that being an 18-carat manic depressive gave him an over-acute capacity for sadness as well as emotion. That was an understatement. Numerous incidents attest to Sinatra's frightening outbursts. In one infamous 1947 altercation, Sinatra brutally attacked newspaper columnist Lee Mortimer outside Ciro's nightclub, apparently furious over something Mortimer had written. Witnesses heard Sinatra scream, "I'll kill you," as he beat the man. He was arrested and later paid a settlement to drop assault charges. His own entourage nicknamed him the Monster for the way his temper could flare without warning. Associates knew that if Frank felt disrespected, tables might be flipped or fists might fly. He trashed a hotel suite in a rage when a Las Vegas casino owner cut off his credit, smashing windows and phones in a frenzy. Actress Shelley Winters, no stranger to tempestuous behavior herself, once described Sinatra's anger as terrifying. John Wayne. John Wayne's image as a no-nonsense tough guy wasn't just an act. The Duke could explode in anger when provoked, even in highly public settings. Perhaps the most infamous example came at the 1973 Academy Awards. That year, Indigenous activist Sachin Littlefeather took the stage to decline Marlon Brando's Oscar on his behalf, denouncing Hollywood's treatment of Native Americans. Wayne, watching from backstage, was incensed by Littlefeather's brief speech. According to Littlefeather, the 66-year-old Wayne erupted in a rage and tried to storm the stage to physically attack her, and it took 6 security men to hold him back. She later described it as the most violent moment in Oscars history, a legendary actor nearly brawling amid Hollywood's biggest night. This startling episode wasn't entirely out of character. Wayne had a well-known stubborn, hot-headed streak. Colleagues noted that if he felt something un-American or disrespectful was happening, his face would redden and a stream of profanity might follow. He was physically imposing, 6'4" and barrel-chested, and on film sets he could intimidate crew or co-stars with a single glare. In private life, Wayne was generally genial, but certain issues like patriotism or personal slights could trigger a temper tantrum. AAA. Errol Flynn. Errol Flynn's life was as action-packed off-screen as it was in his classic adventure films. The Australian-born American star became synonymous with devil-may-care heroes in films like Robin Hood, but he also earned notoriety for a reckless temper and barroom brawls. Flynn's most famous flare-up occurred on the set of The Charge of the Light Brigade, 1936. A passionate horseman, Flynn was outraged when director Michael Curtis used tripwires that caused horses to trip and be injured during a battle scene. Witnesses say Flynn confronted Curtis in fury over the cruelty, and it escalated into a physical fight. The enraged actor attacked his director on the spot. The two men had to be pulled apart before serious damage was done. Flynn later said he nearly ran Curtis through with a prop sword during the altercation. This wasn't the only time Flynn's anger turned violent. He had a well-documented habit of getting into drunken brawls at Hollywood nightclubs. In 1941, he slapped gossip columnist Jimmy Fiddler during an argument at Macombo, prompting Fiddler's wife to jab Flynn with a fork. Flynn laughed it off publicly, but it added to his bad boy legend. At his 32nd birthday party, a drunken melee broke out that made headlines. Flynn often claimed to have blacked out during these alcohol-fueled fights, a convenient excuse for the broken noses and bruises left in his wake. Even minor pranks on set could trigger him. During Light Brigade, a horseplay prank by an extra so infuriated Flynn that he dragged the man off a horse and beat him until they became friends afterward. Ava Gardner. Sultry and self-reliant, Ava Gardner was a Golden Age bombshell with a legendary temper to match her beauty. Raised poor in North Carolina, Gardner had a wild streak that only intensified under the pressures of fame and tumultuous relationships. She wasn't afraid to throw a punch, even at powerful men. Her on-and-off romance with billionaire Howard Hughes was especially volatile. During one explosive argument in the 1940s, Hughes hit Ava hard, actually dislocating her jaw. Gardner's response was swift and brutal. She smashed a heavy onyx ashtray over Hughes's head, knocking him out cold. Blood spattered the walls and furniture as Hughes crumpled, and a panicked Ava thought she might have killed him. Only the intervention of studio boss Louis B. Mayer's team kept the incident under wraps and got Hughes to a hospital. That ashtray episode became Hollywood legend, but it was far from Ava's only fiery moment. Married 3 times, including to Frank Sinatra, Gardner had a habit of hurling objects when enraged. In one fight with Sinatra, she allegedly threw a champagne bottle that shattered a mirror and nearly Frank's head. Sinatra himself admitted that Ava's temper could outmatch even his own. "If we were ever in a fight," he quipped, "she's the one who did the punching." Gardner also famously knocked down rival actress and reputed frenemy Shelley Winters with a liquor bottle during a spat. Even at calmer moments, Ava's razor-sharp tongue could cut deeply. On set, if she felt disrespected, the director or co-star would get a tongue lashing in her husky southern drawl. Marlon Brando. Marlon Brando's intensity as an actor carried over into a combustible real-life temper. From his early days as Hollywood's brooding icon in the 1950s to his later reclusive years, Brando oscillated between charm and explosive anger. One of the most notorious examples occurred in 1973, when Brando violently confronted paparazzo Ron Galella. Fed up with Galella's constant trailing, Brando finally snapped on a New York sidewalk. He sucker-punched the photographer in the face, breaking Galella's jaw and shattering 5 of his teeth. Galella had to wear a football helmet whenever photographing Brando afterward. The incident led to a lawsuit which Brando settled for $40,000, sealing Brando's rep as a star who wouldn't hesitate to use his fists. Throughout his career, colleagues reported Brando's mercurial moods on set. During Mutiny on the Bounty 1962, his frustration with the production led him to raging confrontations with the director and crew, at times halting filming with angry tirades. On Apocalypse Now, 1979, Brando's unpredictable temperament, disappearing into the jungle, refusing lines, became the stuff of legend, though by then it was more passive resistance than outburst. In personal life, Brando's temper sometimes turned darkly tragic. He had violent altercations with romantic partners. One girlfriend in the 1950s claimed Brando beat her in a jealous rage, an incident he later regretted. He could be imperious and intimidating, once terrorizing a studio executive by smashing a chair during a contract dispute. Yet those who knew him say Brando's anger often stemmed from personal demons and deep sensitivities. Jerry Lewis. On camera, Jerry Lewis was the zany clown prince of 1950s comedy. Off camera, he was often a nightmare to work with, prone to tantrums and cruelty. Co-workers and co-stars have described Lewis as a man whose need for control and recognition manifested in an explosive, sometimes mean-spirited temper. As his fame grew post-Martin and Lewis, Jerry wielded his power on film sets like a tyrant. One disturbing account comes from actress Karen Sharp, Lewis's leading lady in The Disorderly Orderly, 1964. Sharp recalls that when she politely rebuffed Lewis's sexual advances, he became furious and proceeded to punish her throughout the shoot. He banned anyone on set from speaking to her under threat of fines and refused to rehearse scenes with her, forcing Sharp to perform without any practice. This silent cruelty created a hostile environment that left the young actress isolated and intimidated. Lewis's mercurial behavior was well known in Hollywood. Cantankerous, difficult, and cruel is how Vanity Fair summarized his reputation, an insecure egomaniac behind the wacky public persona. He was notorious for berating crew members if a gag failed and had no qualms about yelling at or even firing staff on the spot. Co-star Jill St. John once walked off a project after Lewis screamed at her over a minor costume issue. Even Dean Martin, his longtime partner, ended their legendary duo in part because he was fed up with Jerry's overbearing, tantrum-prone ways. As years went by, Lewis didn't mellow. He became an old crank, known for scathing, awkward interviews where flashes of anger pierced through, such as a 2016 Hollywood Reporter interview that he answered with icy one-word replies and visible irritation. It's a jarring contrast. The man who delighted millions with pratfalls and goofy grins was, to many who knew him, a selfish man with a nasty streak. Jerry Lewis's legacy thus comes in two parts, one of laughter and one of wrath, proving that comedic genius and real-life anger often went hand in hand. Gene Kelly. On screen, Gene Kelly danced with a smile, but behind the scenes, the legendary Hoofer's perfectionist streak often erupted into anger. Kelly demanded the highest standards from himself and everyone around him, and when those standards weren't met, his temper flared. Debbie Reynolds, his co-star in the beloved Singin' in the Rain, 1952, learned this the hard way. Only 19 and not a trained dancer, Reynolds was pushed by Kelly through grueling rehearsals that left her feet bleeding. He was a cruel taskmaster, Reynolds said, recalling how Gene yelled at her until she cried during filming. In one instance, after dozens of takes of the Good Morning number, Reynolds' legs gave out. She hid under a piano sobbing until Fred Astaire found her, a testament to how harsh Kelly could be on a young performer. Kelly himself later admitted, "I wasn't very nice to Debbie. I'm surprised she still speaks to me." His exacting, sometimes abrasive style wasn't reserved for Reynolds. Biographers note that Kelly frequently pushed people to their limit and had a volatile temper on set. He would shout at crew if lighting or camera angles didn't capture his choreography just right, and he had little patience for mistakes. Co-workers nicknamed him the Sergeant for his militaristic discipline. On the 1954 film Brigadoon, for example, Kelly clashed with director Vincente Minnelli and reportedly blew up when technical issues forced retakes of a complex dance. He kicked a chair and cursed loud enough to silence the soundstage. Yet many who worked with Gene respected him enormously despite the tirades. Reynolds herself, after surviving Singin' in the Rain, said Kelly had to be hard on me and it made me a better dancer. Kelly's drive for perfection was inseparable from his temper, two sides of the same coin. So while we remember him joyfully splashing through puddles on screen, it's also true that off-screen, Gene Kelly could rage like a tempest until everything was exactly as he envisioned. W.C. Fields. W.C. Fields cultivated a comic persona as a misanthrope who despised kids, dogs, and sentiment, and that persona wasn't far from reality. Behind his nasal drawl and comedic timing lay a sour temper that often spilled into cruelty, especially toward his tiniest co-stars. Fields' most infamous outburst involved a toddler actor known as Baby Leroy, who appeared with him in several 1930s films. During the filming of Tilly and Gus, 1933, Baby Leroy's on-set antics, typical toddler misbehavior, pushed Fields to the brink. After numerous ruined takes, the child wouldn't sit still or hit his mark. Fields decided to take matters into his own hands. As he later bragged, He spiked the baby's milk bottle with gin to make the tyke drowsy and compliant. According to Field's colorful account, baby Leroy sucked down the tainted bottle and soon staggered through the scene like a Barrymore, finally allowing filming to proceed. This outrageous act has become Hollywood lore, likely embellished by Fields himself, but it underscores his genuine antipathy toward children on set. In another episode, Fields reportedly got so frustrated with baby Leroy grabbing props that he kicked the toddler, a story he half-jokingly neither confirmed nor denied. His one-liners in interviews, "I like children, if they're properly cooked," only slightly masked a real impatience and anger when working with kids. Beyond children, W.C. Fields was equal opportunity irritable. He fought constantly with directors and writers, unleashing profanity-laced rants if he thought a gag wasn't funny or if a crew member interrupted his midday drinking. Wallace Beery. On screen, Wallace Beery often played gruff but golden-hearted characters. He even won an Oscar for one. Off-screen, however, Beery was widely regarded as a vile-tempered, unpleasant man. Many colleagues considered him misanthropic and difficult to work with, as one account bluntly states. Actor Robert Young didn't mince words, calling Beery a shitty person who was loathed by everybody in Hollywood. The tales of Beery's behavior support those harsh assessments. He was notoriously lazy on set, not bothering to learn lines and deliberately feeding wrong cues to throw off other actors. If a co-star upstaged him, Beery would fly into a sulk or subtly sabotage their close-ups. MGM publicists tried to rein him in, but even studio boss Louis B. Mayer, who acknowledged Beery's a son of a bitch, kept him on because his films made money. Beery's mistreatment of child actors was especially cruel. Young Jackie Cooper, who acted opposite Beery in The Champ 1931 and other films, recalled that Beery would undermine him out of jealousy, tripping him in scenes, mocking him between takes, and once shoving the little boy away when Jackie tried to hug him after an emotional scene. Cooper called Beery a big disappointment as a human being. Another child star, Margaret O'Brien, said crew members had to protect her from Beery's antics in 1946. He thought it funny to pinch her constantly, reducing the girl to tears. Rumors even swirled linking Beery to an offset tragedy, the 1937 death of comedian Ted Healy in a brawl. Some accounts, though never proven, alleged Beery was among the men who beat Healy that night. While hard evidence is lacking, the fact that such rumors were widely believed speaks to Beery's bullying reputation. Betty Hutton. Betty Hutton's meteoric rise at Paramount came with a price, a reputation for being difficult that eventually derailed her time in Hollywood. Hutton's high-energy personality could flip into high drama without warning. During the production of Annie Get Your Gun, 1950, Betty stepped into the title role after Judy Garland was fired. It should have been Hutton's crowning triumph, but instead it became a nightmare of clashing egos. Hutton's eagerness to prove herself rubbed the MGM cast and crew the wrong way. She openly celebrated replacing Garland, even bawled out Paramount executives for not getting the project sooner. Her lack of tact bred resentment on set, and soon Betty felt isolated and targeted. With tensions mounting, Hutton's own behavior grew erratic. Co-star Howard Keel recalled how Betty would lose her temper over staging. In one scene, she believed Keel was upstaging her, and she demanded 35 retakes until the scene was to her satisfaction. Such antics infuriated the crew. "She's upstaging the hell out of you," one actor warned Keel, who tried to laugh it off. Hutton also insisted on special treatment, like having an air conditioner brought on set, which colleagues felt was presumptuous for a newcomer at MGM. By her own admission, Hutton couldn't shut up when she should have. She talked back to directors, publicly criticized her studio bosses, and aired grievances to the press. This pattern followed her back to Paramount, where after Buddy DeSilva, her mentor, left, Betty sparred with the new studio heads. Frustrated with the substandard scripts they gave her, she blew up in meetings and finally paid to terminate her contract in 1952. Her film career abruptly ended. Insiders noted that Hutton's difficult behavior and use of pills ended her career. Indeed, she had begun relying on prescription drugs to manage the stress, which only amplified her mood swings. In later interviews, a contrite Hutton recognized her mistakes. "It was probably too much Hutton, too fast," she wrote, acknowledging her temper and big mouth alienated many. Susan Hayward. Brooklyn-born, Susan Hayward projected strength and grit in her Oscar-winning roles, and those qualities were drawn from life. Behind her striking beauty, Hayward possessed a hot temper and emotional volatility that she struggled to control. In the 1940s, as her career gained traction, she earned the nickname the Brooklyn Bombshell, in part for her brash, no-nonsense attitude. Hayward was unafraid to speak her mind, even if it meant shouting down directors or storming off in a huff. A 1950s magazine profile noted that every once in a while Mrs. Barker's Susan's temper blows, and when it does, all the dishes rattle out of the cupboards and all the bystanders run for the hills. In other words, Susan's fury at home could shake the whole house, literally. Friends and family understood that her Irish flared temper, as she called it, would erupt over relatively small incidents, but cool off just as quickly. On film sets, Hayward's fiery streak sometimes led to showdowns. She famously clashed with co-star Bette Davis while making Where Love Has Gone, 1964. Two strong wills that resulted in screaming matches, and on-set tension the crew never forgot. Back in 1947, during The Lost Moment, Hayward was reportedly so upset with director Martin Gabel's handling of a scene that she threw a glass prop in anger, nearly hitting a cameraman. Another time, she slapped a Kyo actor who she felt was getting too familiar. These incidents earned her a difficult label among some directors. Yet, colleagues also recall Susan's professionalism and the warm side beneath the feistiness. Bing Crosby. To the public, Bing Crosby was the picture of mellow charm, a warm-voiced family man singing White Christmas. But Crosby's 4 sons by his first marriage knew a very different man, a strict, temperamental father whose discipline crossed into abuse. In 1983, eldest son Gary Crosby shattered Bing's wholesome image with his memoir Going My Own Way, accusing the star of years of corporal punishment and emotional cruelty. According to Gary, Bing's obsession with appearances, including his children's weight, triggered frightening rages. He describes how his father would weigh him every week, and if young Gary had put on a few pounds, punishment ensued. Bing would order the boy to his study, bend him over, pull down his pants, and whip him with a belt until the child bled. "I'd get beat till I bled," Gary wrote, recalling that he survived these thrashings by fantasizing about ways to kill his father. The emotional abuse was just as scarring. Bing taunted Gary about his big broad ass, cruelly nicknaming him Bucket Butt out of anger at the boy's stocky build. Nothing the children did was ever good enough. An off note in a song, a messy room, any normal kid transgression could ignite Bing's icy wrath or a tirade about discipline. 2 of Gary's brothers, Lindsay and Dennis, confirmed that their father's anger was real and terrifying, each in their own way, haunted by it. Tragically, both Lindsay and Dennis later died by suicide, which their family in part attributed to the psychological wounds from their upbringing. Lawrence Tierney. If ever an actor lived up to his rough screen image, it was Lawrence Tierney. In the 1940s, Tierney gained fame playing gangsters in B-movies like Dillinger, but his ferocious temper and barroom brawling soon eclipsed his film roles. Tierney's off-screen fights were so frequent and infamous that they became Hollywood legend and ultimately wrecked his leading man career. Between 1944 and 1951, Tierney was arrested at least a dozen times for drunk and disorderly conduct, assault, and public brawling. Headlines from the era tell the tale: Film Dillinger booked on drunk charge. Actor Tierney must sleep on jail floor. Tierney goes to jail again. The litany of his misdeeds is astounding. He once tore a public phone off a wall in a rage. Another night, he smashed a sugar bowl into a waiter's face during an argument. He broke a college student's jaw in a random punch-up. He even tried to choke a taxi driver who he felt cheated him. All these incidents were fueled by alcohol, Tierney himself admitted. "Booze was always at the root of my misbehavior." His reputation for violence became so bad that by the mid-1950s, studios wouldn't cast him in anything but minor roles. Insurers found him too risky. Katharine Hepburn. Katharine Hepburn was one of Hollywood's most respected and independent actresses, admired for her intelligence and strong will. But behind her legendary performances and cool demeanor was a sharp temper that left a strong impression on those who worked with her. Hepburn had a low tolerance for what she saw as incompetence or unprofessional behavior, and was known to respond quickly and harshly when irritated. Colleagues often described her as blunt and critical, especially when others fell short of her high expectations. While she was not known for explosive rage, her anger came in the form of sharp remarks, sudden reprimands, or pointed silence that made her disapproval unmistakable. Crew members on her films noted she could become visibly impatient during delays, and she didn't hesitate to confront directors or actors she felt were unprepared. During the filming of The African Queen, 1951, Hepburn became frustrated with what she considered a lack of discipline among the cast and crew. She was reportedly vocal about her displeasure, and the production team recognized her intensity and insistence on professionalism. Though never violent or publicly dramatic, Hepburn's temper was seen in the way she dismissed people or shut them out completely after a disagreement. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this look at the fiery side of fame, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts below.